So my name is Dick Hamill, and I'm presenting today with John Turner. He's going to come in at the end and talk about what's coming up. So as a little intro to this project, I had a comment yesterday on one of my YouTube videos, and the comment was like, outrageous, man. And I'm like, you know, that really feels good, you know, if you see outrageous, man, on your comments. Unfortunately, by the time I went to YouTube, the comment had been deleted or edited. So the real... Let me switch it? Yeah. So the real reaction was, outrageous, man. That's a piece of art. How dare you? So it is a piece of art. These machines are pieces of art. That one happened to be Galaxy. And Galaxy is a great machine, and I enjoy playing it as it was. But what I discovered a couple years ago was I could put this board on it, and I'm not changing any of the original boards in the machine. I'm just plugging this into J5 on your MPU. And by plugging this into J5, I can have an Arduino take over your MPU and then put new rules on the machine. You flip a switch, you're still playing Galaxy as it was in, what was it, 1979? Something like that. So here's a comment from, of course, the next thing I did was upvote the comment, because that's my only response to that kind of comment, upvote. Here's a response from a user on Reddit called Rack. First pin I ever programmed, which is a surprise to me. It was tough shoehorning, big rule set. Cool to see it updated. So that's as close as I got to like an actual comment from somebody back in the day. It turned out to be Rob Quinn, it was his first machine at Stern. So let's talk a little bit about architecture. So as I mentioned, you just plug this into your MPU, and it's going to take over for your machine. So the RPU board, this is what I call it. Oh, by the way, you may have seen years ago when I first did, we were calling it BSOS, which was the Bally Stern operating system. The reason I switched to RPU was mostly because it just expanded. So the newer boards, you can either plug into J5 on an old Bally Stern board, or if you've got a Williams or an Atari machine, anything with a 6800 processor, you pop out your 6800 processor, put the board in there, and then you can control a Williams machine same way. I did the libraries so that if you're programming, your library is going to work across any machine. You don't have to relearn the architecture just to do different machines. So these boards use no original code. There's nothing in here that's stealing anything from, let's not get into IP, but there's nothing in here that has any IP back to the original machines. This is all new. So I created a library from scratch based on oscilloscope, using oscilloscopes on the MPU, figure out the timing of the solenoid, something John was just mentioning a minute ago, where you have the flyback. I learned at the time that you have to turn off your solenoids for Bally Sterns, right when the zero crossing. So I replicated all that stuff in the Arduino, using some of the same theories that Bally published in the Theory of Pinball document that they did when they came out with the original solid-state machines, but all new implementation. And as I mentioned, you flip a switch, or in the latest boards, you can just hold the credit reset button when you boot. So on this board, this is a Rev 3. It's the smallest board, in terms of like footprint that's supported by everything right now. But it doesn't do credit button reset, so you have to put a physical switch on this one if you want to switch between old code and new code. But the latest machines, once you implement them, you can just, it's configurable, but you can power it up to new code, hold the credit reset power it button to while you boot to get to original code. However you want to configure it, it's going to boot either way. And then that gets you all new scoring systems, whatever scheme you want to put in there. You can do modes. You can do whatever the machine supports, plus whatever you can think of. So one of the things I put into the early OS was, you could do dim levels on your lamps just by turning them on and off, pulse width modulating them on the interrupt. And that doesn't work great with LEDs, so some people don't implement it that way. But basically, you can imagine that this is like a brand new brain for your machine. So anything you can think of, you can put in there. So here's a picture of, this is maybe the second one I did of the original prototype. This was using an Arduino Nano. This one plugged into J5 of Stars was the first machine I did. So when I first came out with it, you could only boot to the Arduino, but then quickly with advice from some people on Pinside, Zach and Scott and Quench and all the names that you've seen, everybody kind of dove in and helped me figure out how to make it so that you could dual boot, which is, to me, that's the big difference between this one and other pinball modding projects. So the technology already existed to do like an Arduino controller for your pinball machines, or you could do a Lisi controller, which was, some of the Lisi controllers use a really interesting, FPGA method of like rewriting these machines or emulating the original machines, and that's great, but that's a board swap. So that's like take out your MPU, or in some cases take out your MPU and your solenoid driver, put in brand new boards, and it's, to me, I wanted a solution that was a little less intrusive because, I keep machines for years, but I do not keep machines forever. And some owners may not want, a machine that's all that I've changed over to do my stuff. With this board, you pop it out, it's back to the original. Although it's gone a little bit farther with some of my machines, so we'll talk about in a second. So this is what I've been using lately. I call it the Rev 102, and the reason I call it the Rev, I went to 3 digits, was because this one's a CPU socket as opposed to the original, which was just plug into the diagnostics port. So you can see that this has got a 6800 right on it because I popped this one out of Lightning maybe to take this photo. So no, it wasn't. Anyway, who cares? So basically, you pop the original CPU out of your machine, you plug it into this board, and this board is like a little parasite sitting on your MPU. On the back of that board, you see it has like a regular 40-pin connector, so that just plugs into your CPU slot of your MPU, and then it just takes over from there. Now, in addition, lately, some of the guys, a whole crew of people has kind of joined me in developing stuff for this, which is awesome. And John's going to tell you about Wi-Fi later and displays later. So we've got the ports capable for doing Wi-Fi and displays right on this board. So you can do some diagnostics. You can do various things with the new technology. So we wanted to make it expandable so we could reach out to other things. And then the one thing I put in almost all machines now, sound is so important, is I've been putting these little wave trigger boards, and that's a little board you can get off of. Well, you can get it on Amazon. You can get it a number of places. They're about $50, $60. It's kind of pricey compared to the rest of the project, believe it or not. But those will do all your digital sounds. It's that little red board in the picture. So you plug in your speakers to that. You have to add speakers. And then you get background music. You get call-outs. You get sound effects. You get anything else you want to add to the machine. So for some of the machines, like Williams especially, if you're talking like a Stellar Wars, which is one of the Williams machines I did, boy, the sounds on Stellar Wars or Gorgar are just so distinctive and so nice that I like to do both ways. I like to have background music and then have the sounds on top of it. Sounds great. This gives you the opportunity to do that, but it's costly compared to the rest of the project. So here's the MPUs I support right now, plus a couple others. So you get the Bally's, the 1735, the Stearns MPU 100, 200. Imagine all the machines that are, there's a lot of machines. Alltech, it handles right off the bat. Alltech works great. Weebly, you have to use the CPU plug-in because Andy does some interesting stuff with his addressing, so it doesn't work on J5, but you can use the Rev 102 for that. And then all the Williams, there was a bug in my System 4 code that I got cleared up a couple days ago. So Williams is cool, 4 through 11C. So that gets you a lot of really interesting titles in there. Although once you get into the 11s, those are pretty good code-wise anyway. So I don't know how much more new code you need on top of that. So here's a 35. And then there's your J5 port, the diagnostics port on top. Stern used that for audio plugins, but Bally never used it. I guess they had a diagnostics device. I've never seen one. That was how I originally got into this. I was like, I had a board I couldn't fix. I could fix it, but I just didn't want to do it the hard way. I wanted to try to do it the easy way. So I plugged an Arduino into that J5 port, and I thought, well, I'll just interrogate it and see what lines are doing what, and maybe I can figure out what's wrong with this board. And I did. But as I was doing it, I was like, well, if I can interrogate the board, I can just take over the board, because you can just, hold the chip, the original CPU, and say, halt, and then go off and do your own stuff, and it works great. So there's still a lot of areas there that could be exploited that I just kind of, once I got into developing new code, I kind of stepped aside from. In particular, but one of the things that always goes wrong with those 35 boards is if you've got the scan-B sockets, there's going to be shorts between your address lines or your data lines. So you're just going to replace those sockets there. It's shameful that I even have a picture of those sockets because those are awful sockets. But with the plugging into the diagnostics ports, you could raise an address line or flash an address line and then monitor the other address lines and see if you have a short, because the Arduino has decent voltage sensing on the other ports. I haven't written that software yet, but it's right there. So I put a diagnostic hook into the code. You can have a diagnostics mode. If somebody wants to go out and exploit the libraries I've already got or write your own libraries, that's an area where it could be really helpful in the future. Now, I don't know how many people are super invested in restoring old boards. Maybe some people in this room, but aside from us, a lot of people are just going to throw an Altec or a Weebly in there and just call it done. Personally, I like to put the old boards in there because I work with a partner chip, and if we don't have to spend money on an Altec, we're just going to not spend money on an Altec. So anyway, that's a area that I would like to see improved. The other option is that's the U9 of that board. That's the purple circle around that. You can just plug in a Rev 102. So that'll work for any board. It doesn't require J5 on there. So that's a little bit more, whatever, generic. So here's this board, Rev 3, plugged into that diagnostics port. And it's a little hard to see in this picture, but I mirror the port pins off there. So if you do have a Stern game, like a Trident is one that I have, that has an SB100 sound card that plugs into the J5, you can just plug that into my board. My board just sits in the middle and negotiates between the two. So your old sound card will still work, old code or new code. Here's a Rev 102 plugged into the CPU socket. And again, the benefit I like of the Rev 4 and the Rev 102 is that you can do credit button. It's like magic. You can play the game in two different ways. Just by holding down the credit reset button. It's cool. Here's an Altec plugged into J5. Again, Altec works either way, J5 or CPU socket. And then the Weebly is only going to, oh, there's a Williams. Weebly only works with CPU socket. So here's a quick demonstration in case you haven't seen STARS. This is just a short video to show you the capabilities of the system. Oh, and I don't know if I have audio turned up. Apologies, I think I need to just transfer audio over to the Camlink 4K, I imagine. Let's see if that works. I've got audio coming, hopefully, so.
We got the STARS progress, but hitting that amber again, if you're below level 3, we'll award you the next level of STARS. Unfortunately,
imagine digital sound's going on right now. So you can see that I'm flashing lights, which STARS didn't do. I'm doing hurry-ups on in lanes, which STARS didn't do. I've got a flashing light on the right drop target bank because I've got those targets in order. If I complete them in order, I get an extra bonus. And I did multiple levels of STARS. So STARS start out unlit, then they'll go dim once you get them to level 1, and then full strength, and then flashing, I think, for level 3 on this version. So it makes STARS into a different experience. Still a great game. Still play it the old way, but you get digital sound and whatever. For the next one, I do actually have to figure out how to get audio onto here. Oh, you don't have audio in the room?
No, we don't know how it's. We can experiment with it and see.
Okay, well, let's come back to the videos then. All right, so I'll keep going for now, and remind me to come back to that. Okay, so with my Trident, once I did all that stuff, to reprogram it. By the way, Trident, if I'm sure many of you have played it, it is To me, it's like stars and even better. It's got, your two spinners, and it's got your drop targets, but your drop targets are individually controllable, which is awesome. It's got those memory drops that Stern came up with. And it's got a saucer, and a saucer is a great way to start like a mode, if you will. So what I did is I divided the playfield into 3 portions. I said, here's your drop targets, here's your spinners, and here's your stand-ups. The spinners, you qualify your mode by alternating the spinners twice. So you got to do left, right, left, right. Drop targets you have to clear a couple times to get up to clear the sharpshooter. And the stand-ups, you have to light them all once. Once you do that, it qualifies your modes, and then you use the saucer to start a mode. And you can stack. So if I qualify my spinners, qualify my drop targets, then I hit the saucer to start both of those modes at the same time. After I did that, I was like, well, what would make it even cooler is if each of those modes was like an add-a-ball. So multi-ball, single ball play until you get into the mode, then 2 balls for each, an extra ball for each mode you go into. So I put it a 4-ball trough. I got it from Pinball Life. I put all the switches on the original matrix. I created a little opto board so I could hook my ball trough switches into my matrix as well. And then I added an auto plunger. To me, auto plunge obviously is key when you're doing multi-ball because that keeps the flow of the play going. The way I added all those things, with Trident, I was able to just use the existing slots that were already there. It already had a bunch of switch matrix holes that were just unused, and it had a continuous solenoid line that was unused that I could hook up to the auto plunger. So when I hook up the solenoid for my new trough, and I hooked all this stuff up, I did it exactly the way the original code did it. So you can still play my Trident with the original code, still works exactly the same way it did. But flip the switch, go into my new thing, and you get multi-ball Trident on the same platform. We should have talked about audio, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Yeah, that just happened, didn't it?
Yeah. So I've got...
Do you have a video clip you can send me real quick?
Sure, absolutely. Where am I sending it to?
Yeah, let me just read my email address.
Oh, no, I've got an SD card. So this has got the presentation in 3 formats. Hopefully one of them will get you there. So here's my Trident playfield. And this is a mod that, I'm not showing this because I think a lot of people would follow down this path, but it shows you what can be done. And if you're careful about it, this mod is going to give you new capabilities on the same machine that you had, but it still allows you to play as you could before. So I'll come back to that. I've got some pictures of that I can show you, but I can come back to. So the other expansion that we've got on the RPU board, this is for Rev 4 and up, is we've got 3 hardware serial ports exposed. So if you have other peripherals that you want to hook into a serial port, there's 3 different ones. We use one of those for the wave trigger. So if you're going to use digital sounds using a wave trigger board, one of those serial ports is going to be used for that. We use a second serial port for Wi-Fi. Third serial port is wide open for whatever peripherals you want to do. People have talked about doing a topper, that's serial controlled, or there's a person who has an apron display on their Meteor that just cycles through showing the new rules as the person's playing. The apron display is not currently controlled by the code, but it could be. The other port that we've got on there is called I2C, and that's a bus. So you can put as many I2C devices on there as you want, giving you endless capabilities there. And John's going to tell you more about the Wi-Fi port later. So to get this board, if you are the type of person who wants to DIY, build your own, whatever, you can basically do this for about 25 bucks. So what 25 bucks is a printed circuit board. If you do these in bulk or any kind of quantity, or you can kind of get with somebody who's doing these in bulk or any kind of quantity, these are less than $1 a piece. And this is just a printed circuit board from a company called JLC PCB. All the schematics and the Gerber files, which Gerber files you need to manufacture circuit boards, are on my website, which is called pinballrefresh.com. No punctuation in there. So if you build from nothing, just with soldering iron and wires, which I've done several times. I don't recommend it. Super cheap. The biggest expense is going to be an Arduino, which is 16 bucks. Then if you want to talk about putting on digital sounds, then you're talking about a $60 wave trigger and a SD card for that for, I don't know, what, 10 bucks. The whole thing together, less than 100 bucks. Throw some speakers on there, which, you can get cheap speakers off of Amazon. You can get a sound bar from Walmart. You can get speakers at Goodwill, or sometimes a great deal. So you can do this project very cheaply if you want to. The other options are buy a kit. So since I started this project, I've tried to make it very clear from the beginning that I was not in a business here. I was not trying to create a business out of this. What I was doing was trying to use my machines in an interesting way and share that with the world. So if anybody else wanted to use the machines too, and people started jumping on. Very soon after that, people started saying, where can I buy this? I don't want to be in the business of building my own stuff. I just want to plug it in. That's not my thing. I've been out of manufacturing for 30 years now, and I don't intend to get back into manufacturing. It was not my favorite. But a couple other people did. So on Pinside, there's a couple of stores, one run by a guy named Roy G. Bev, and another run by a person named Troxel Repair. And what they do is they produce kits, or they produce fully plug-and-play things. And those will generally cost between 100 and 250 bucks. Depending on what options you get. So it's still not incredibly expensive.
What slide are you on? I need to move you over.
OK. So if we're going back to video, we are on yeah, 7. Let's go to 7. So here's a demonstration of my multi-ball Trident. It doesn't look like that. So Troxel Repair and Roy G. Bev are ways that you can just buy. If you just want to buy it and you don't want to be in the business of trying to create your own, then you can look those up. And again, this is an add-on to your machine. So it's not going to be, if you buy it from somebody else, it's not going to be significantly cheaper than replacing a board, but you don't have to replace a board. And that has its own value in some ways.
Oh, in Massachusetts, there's always a bowling alley nearby.
So I'm going to pause there for a second while we figure out the. Oh, are we? Yeah, let's try it. All right. With that target on the saucer. Not like that, but won't hurt. So I've got 2 modes qualified. There's my 3rd qualified. If I get in the saucer now, I will start those 3 modes all at the same time. Woo, I got a mega sec. That's all 3 modes at the same time. So there's your auto plunger and your 4-ball multi-ball. Lots of points. Need to make sure I got a sharpshooter here. That's the hard one to get. And it might be counterintuitive to think that a flat playfield machine that you've always played a single ball would work as a multi-ball machine. It really does. You'd have to play it in person to maybe buy into that, but I encourage you to if you want, because I think it's a great way to play that. Can we return to this laptop or? Nope. Okay. Let's just keep going to slide 8 then. So I've got cues in it. Can I hit spacebar? Okay. All right, so here's my Trident mods real quick. I've already talked about them, but you see the ball trough on the bottom. That's from Pinball Life. That was a pretty easy install. I just had to rotate the flipper out of the way. It's got another kit from Pinball Life again for the what do you call that? Well, there's the auto plunger, and then there's they make a kit that does the top stuff as well on top of the playfield. So my rules when I extend a machine is I like to just slip stuff in, as I mentioned. I like it to be all in the same system that it was before, so that you can still run it the old way. So here's the build your own notes. Is that the stuff I'm running now is running on an Arduino Mega Pro. If you're crazy or retired, like I said, did I hit a button? Okay, comment animations. So here's my Rev 100 prototype. That took a while. It works, but don't do it. It's bad. If you order your own PCBs, then it's super easy to just populate them. It's a short list of components. That's all on. You can find it on Pinball Refresh. We are making a wiki at Pinball Index. Again, no punctuation. One of the guys set up a wiki so we could list out all the parts, and that has parts lists that are clickable that you can go and get all your parts. This is a Rev 102 board. I did all my components for isolating the CPU on this one as surface mount, so I could just have that populated overseas. I didn't have to do, all the hand placement of the through-hole parts. There's a through-hole version as well. If you prefer that, I know a lot of people do. I just like ordering it and getting it, so all my resistors and surface mount parts are already on there. If you want to buy a kit, search for Roy G. Bev or Troxel Repair. I don't think Troxel has the Rev 102 yet, but here's Roy G. Bev's 102 kit. It comes with all this stuff, and I think this is 150, 180. I don't remember. It's it's reasonable. It's a couple $100. And I've heard that Roy G. Bev really supports this stuff well, and he gives you all the parts he thinks that you need to, really mount it and get it in there right. So that's nice. I do less of that. So here's the kit. You can find it on Pinside. I think I skipped something, but whatever. So here's a set of speakers that I got off of Amazon the other day. They're only $33. Not a tremendous amount of bass, but not terrible for $33. So what I do is I mount the subwoofer in the cabinet, and then I'll throw the speakers on top. Sometimes behind the back glass if the back glass is not too thick, but you'll lose a lot of treble that way. Here's the Rev 3 board. I still support this in the code because some people prefer the fact that it is so small and so easy to build. You can build one of these in an hour just soldering the components. It just uses part of the Arduino, which is why it doesn't have support for some of the advanced features, and it doesn't have all the ports blown out like the other boards. So if you want to do a whole lot of mods, I don't recommend the Rev 3. But if you're just going it against an existing code base, or you're just trying to get your feet wet in this system, you can do the Rev 3 for pretty cheap, and a couple of people sell kits on that. So here, this is a Gorgar machine that I just installed on the other day. So this is a standard System 6. You pop out the CPU that was already in there. That's in the System 6 is the 6808. This board here is not the one that I've been talking about. This is the Rev 101. The reason why I switched from 101 to 102 is 101 you had to do a physical jumper to tell if it was a 6800 or a 6802. And then I got a little bit smarter and I said, well, I can make that automatic. So there's no jumper on the 102. It just detects the CPU and operates it with it fine. So you just plug that in, turn it on, and it's ready to go. I've got a machine called Example Machine up there that will build for Williams, Bally, Stern, Atari. And Example Machine knows how to do all the, the standard ball handling stuff. Start a new ball, see that the ball's in the trough, start again, that kind of stuff. Fortunately, with these companies, they had standardized, switches and stuff like that for most of these machines, so you can get away with having, kind of a standardized system. This is a, I don't know, Meteor maybe, with an Alltech, with an old Rev 2 board plugged in, but you see that the Stern cables plug right into that board. And then with a board, if you want a physical switch to switch between code bases, There's often a grate where you can just mount a physical. It's hard to see that switch there, but where are we on time? I've been back and forth on this. Oh, okay. So I just want to go over quickly. If you wanted to create your own code, it's not as daunting as it might seem, because there's already a framework and a library of calls available that I've developed over the past few years. Arduino basically has a setup function and a loop function. Super easy to use. Setup, you're just going to do all of your stuff where it initializes the MPU. That's one call. And then the loop function is where you're going to do all your game logic. And then there's an interrupt service routine that I wrote that does all the hardware stuff. So everything dealing with the lamps, the solenoids, the switches, all that stuff, the sounds, is already all done. And that lives in an ISR. And that ISR works as I use the oscilloscope on the original boards. I made my interrupt service routine work exactly the way theirs did in terms of the timing of signals and stuff like that. It has, any pinball machine has the ability to catch fire. Let's just be honest about that. But my machines, machines running my code have no more or less ability to catch fire than any other pinball machine. Yeah, I mean, so if you want to be super careful as you're developing your code, pull the playfield fuse. Just don't be crazy. But there haven't been that many whatevers that whatever incidents are always going to happen. So that ISR is going to do all that talk for you. On Williams machines, I think Williams machines get a lot of guff for that big 40-pin connector that was terrible. But man, they had the blanking signal, and the blanking signal saved a lot of people's solenoids, I think. So all you need to mess with when you're developing a machine is that center part. That's the loop. That's the game loop. That's where you're doing your stuff. And I created a variable that's machine state. It's going to either go to one of 4 places: self-test and track mode, diagnostics, which we talked about, and gameplay mode. And then you're basically just going to go into the gameplay mode, and you're going to work with init gameplay, init new ball, manage game mode. So you can just imagine from how these are named what they do. So you're just going in there and you're putting in your own code. At this point, there's so many examples. There's got to be at least a half dozen or more people who have developed code for these. So there's a lot of examples out, open source on GitHub. GitHub is a place where you can share code, and everything that I've done is free and open source with a GPL license, which means that anybody here is free to download it, use it, compile it, modify it. Give me credit, don't give me credit. I don't care about any of it. It's all there for you to use and do what you want with. So in my game mode, I update timers, execute game logic, change line states, and manage displays. So that's how I approach a machine. When I was doing Gorgar the other day, I'll show you in a second. Here's some basic instructions. If you get the code from GitHub, there's a link, Pinball Refresh. Download the zip, unpack it, put it in a folder with the appropriate name, and then update your RPU config. Your RPU config tells it what kind of machine you're running on. So here's GitHub. The download button is that green code button. Here's my folder for, it comes in as example machine. I turned that into Demon 23 because I'm doing Gorgar. So one thing I've been doing lately is, when I first started out, I was naming things like, Stars 2020, and then I realized, that's kind of disingenuous. This isn't Stars. This is my game code running on a Stars machine. So I've been renaming stuff to unique names to not tread on those original names. And then here's what Arduino looks like. This happens to be the RPU config file, and you just go in and you tell it what hardware rev you're running on, what architecture it is. Whether or not it's a 6800 CPU, although the new boards will detect that for you, so you don't even need to do that. And then it's basically a matter of using your manual or just your eyeballs, figuring out which lamps are in which indices, and then going in and making your files match that. So I created defines for all my lamps. Then here's all my switches, defines for all my switches. Same thing with solenoids. Sometimes you have to dive into the deep schematics to find what you're looking for. But it's all pretty, once you get used to it, it's self-explanatory. Did I lose? Oh, sorry. It's just the, okay. So here's some more demonstrations. This is the other video I wanted to show you. This is various people, not just me, and some of my highlights from what I've seen other people do. Just imagine the correct colors.
Valley's Flash Gordon game code.
Deep Blue Sea.
Then here's 110 seconds of Deep Blue Sea. So this is just jackpot hunting. Saucer's jackpot.
Change. This is like flapping bird wings. Waterfall sound. Little knife sounds, sword sounds, and stuff like that.
Now chase that thing out of here. The sensor reader should be telling you where to go. Get on it. Just chase the thing.
Alright. So you can hold the right flipper, and it'll show you where the... What's the next one? Top one. This is one of my favorite rewrites. Watching so many people in tournaments just get the ball on the left flipper and go to the spinner. This code version makes you use every part of the play field if you want to score points, including that weird lane on the left-hand side.
Please return to your seats for our final approach.
So you hear the call-outs and the digital sounds and the lights flashing and the... My nephew did this attract mode, or this is a waiting for plunge mode, I should say. Oh, so this is the user DFNL. I don't remember his name, but he took another programmer's version of Flash Gordon 2021 and then added on video and multi-ball onto it, so you could do, your video clips and multi-ball, etc. Meteor is one of my favorite rewrites.
This is incoming. We've targeted the media. Shoot only the lit shots to avoid fragmentation.
So I'm in Orpheus mode.
So that's the basics of RPU. We'll take questions at the end, but John's going to talk about what's upcoming and.
Do you want to talk about LED and diagnostics real quick?
No.
All right.
All right, cool. So, John Turner, I got started actually by buying a pinball machine that already had Dick's code running on it. I'd actually researched and I wanted to implement RPU, and I was looking for a Bally Stern machine that I could do it on. And I happened to find a machine actually out there that already had it on it, and it got me jump started. So. It's really easy to do. Everything that Dick talked about in terms of the timing and the interrupts and things like that, you don't have to do it. Dick did all the hard work for you. Now you just got to learn a little bit of coding, which is a fun project, and what better to learn coding on than a pinball machine. So if you like pinball and you want to get into learning how to code, this is an awesome way to do it. It's a lot of fun, and if you have a passion for it, which is sort of where I had it. So I had an initial idea. Let's go into the next slide, which was I actually was, and how I found it is I have an old machine. It's a Strange Science. Interestingly enough, we haven't implemented RPU on that yet, but I wanted to send my scores up to Twitter. I just wanted to, hey, I played a game. Here's my high score. Wouldn't that be fun? Well, anyway, so once I found RPU and started working with Dick on it, and implemented it a little bit, I thought, hey, this would be a relatively easy thing to actually add Wi-Fi to. So again, once you get beyond sort of the game, you have the game, adding components to the RPU board and into add code into it was relatively easy to write a library. So what I did is I wrote something called OPINs, or Open Pinball Score Server, an idea of basically how do we take these games and send the scores up there. So it's always fun just to know. I like to see how many games I've played and what the scores are and things like that. A lot of fun to be able to just go ahead and do that. So and the big thing for us on this was wanted to minimize the load on the RPU, because one of the big things is that the Arduino has to service obviously very fast, right? You don't want any delays on playing the game, so this wanted to be very non-intrusive. So this was a daughter board. So the way I implemented this, next slide, was using an ESP32 module. So this is a relatively easy chip to program. It's got Arduino support, so it was perfect for it. And I chose to implement by serial. I could have done I2C, which is maybe a little more reliable, but serial was just an easy way for us to do this. It makes it really easy to program. For if people want to extend this and things like this, it's relatively easy to do. But again, it's Arduino code based. It's got a separate library, easy to enable. It's not required. So you can do all you just saw without having that board on there. Or if we want to add this in, you add it on. So as far as the module goes, relatively pretty easy to do. I have 2 library calls: audit update, game update, and there's actually one that's just game over. So very simple calls that you put within the code to enable this. And this is all customizable per machine. So each machine has different achievements and scores and things like that. Next slide. So what this does is it actually sends it up to the portal. So this is a RESTful API using Python, something called Fast API. Really pretty easy. None of this should be anything that you have to program. The idea was basically that the portal would just accept updates from the game. So as far as adding special things to it, you would just program your game, add your achievements and things like that, and it would just send it up to the OPINs portal. OPINs was supposed to be just generic, easy to use, and again, nothing that required you to customize, because the last thing you wanted to have to do is then learn how to program on the web. And trust me, I had to learn all this. It was interesting to do. But you can see, really, it's a modernized web app. I've actually got it Dockerized. Don't even ask. But it's relatively easy to integrate. Because it's using API, you could take a dot matrix display, you could add anything you wanted, and you could actually plug into that API and then do a display. So if you wanted to do like a tournament at your house, or you wanted to do a tournament someplace, you could have all these machines send that data back through the API and then update. Really relatively easy as far as extending is concerned. Right now, it's very sort of focused on the owner versus the player. Dick and I have talked about some changes and how maybe we think about this in terms of templating it or making it easier for folks to be just a player. So if you want to come to my house and register on OPINs, you could play the game and see your scores. Obviously, as this thing expands, if people are interested, then that's something we'll probably add on. But yeah, it's relatively easy to do. And you can see, I got all the game audit machines, so all the audits, the coins, and things like that, replays are all in there. So a lot of fun to do. Next slide. Some futures for this, again, so talked about templated setup per RPU machine. So basically go in and say, hey, I've got Dick's version of Trident with the multi-ball. So all right, we're just going to choose that, drop down and say, all right, that's the machine that I have, and be able to have it just automatically pick up all the associated achievements and things like that. Make it probably a little more leaderboard focused. QR codes. So I've got a couple of, did I bring them up? Oh, they're somewhere. Oh, there they are, right here. So I've got a couple different components. So this is a QR code reader that's connected via I2C. This is something that you could really easily implement into this and have a QR code and just put your QR code like some of the other machines out there, and boom, just automatically identify yourself into the system, right? So a way to say, hey, this is who the player is. So that's some of the things we're thinking about doing, pushing machine settings to the RPU, so being able to go in and let's say you want to change the bonus values, things like that from the web. make those changes, and just push them right down to the machine. So relatively easy. Today, it's unidirectional. The machine sends changes up to the portal, but down the road, it's really easy to implement the reverse. So that was the Wi-Fi module. The second thing, this is somebody had an idea, and I'm trying to remember, Dick, who had the idea. I don't know. Somebody said, hey, let's add a display, right? And it wasn't like we're going to add a giant DMD. This is just like, hey, maybe we want to have something on the board itself. And this is really to sort of replace the serial connection. So a lot of the diagnostics, and whenever you're building a new game, you're like, hey, what happened? Did this, am I running out of battery? I don't know. Every now and then, it seems to go. Or maybe it's the cable. I'll hold it one direction. All right. All right, there we go. Just clip it and stop walking around a bit. A lot of times when you're doing programming, you need to sort of know what's going on. This makes it really easy. You don't have to have your connection, your serial connection, and it's just great for diagnostics messages. I'm looking at doing another version of this right now. Again, this is plugged in by the I2C port. This is a rotary encoder, and it allows it, to basically set up your menu. So instead of having to go and use the scores and all the diagnostics modes and put it in troubleshooting, you could just use this, change your values through a menu-based driven system. Pretty easy to do. So that's some of the cool things that I think that are out there in terms of being able to extend. So again, Dick did all the hard work, and I can't, all of the hard work and timing and things like that were all done. Now it's really just being able to extend the libraries out, which is relatively easy, especially if I can do it, anybody else can do it. Cool.
So think of the diagnostics, by the way, as like you guys know Leon's ROMs, where you plug in Leon's ROMs. If you're familiar with Leon's ROMs to fix your boards up, the diagnostics would work like that. So here's a list of some of the machines. There's more than this, but this is what we have on the wiki right now. One of the hardest things to keep up to date is the documentation, so apologies for that. But we document when we have spare time, which is never. So these machines are at least what's out there. As I mentioned earlier, if you get these boards made like from China, they're less than $1 a piece. And when I get boards made, I just will order like 50 of them. So these are Rev 3s. If anybody wants to grab one, feel free. You'll have to buy the other parts, but I guess you know.
And I got some Rev 4s and 102s actually too.
Oh, perfect. So that's a jump start. If anybody wants to jump start into this project, any questions? Yeah.
I haven't. Hello.
I can repeat the question, so just tell me what it is. Oh, go ahead.
Maybe it's just me. Yeah, that's better. I have a bunch of older Williams. So your System 4 to System 7 in particular. If you plug that into a machine that has bad game ROMs, what happens?
So you can do a number of things. You actually don't need a 5101, CMOS RAM, a 6810, or any of your 2716, 2730. You don't need any other chips in there. It'll take over and do all that stuff for you if you don't want to run old code. Or you can plug in and you can actually, what I do is like to see if I've got a board with unknown code on it, I'll just plug in, turn it on, do a ROM dump, and then check that versus what I think it is, and I can do checksums. And you can actually read those ROMs, see if they're still working. You can go out and test your 5101, see if that's working. So you can use this. It's basically just going to, you imagine that the board, just has all these components sitting on the bus. It's just going to plug into the bus and be able to talk to all those things. So you can do whatever you want with it. Any other questions?
Are the things on GitHub like the old rule set that you can then tweak? Is that intellectual property?
I don't know the answer to that. I don't do anything with old rules. So if you want to develop your stuff from scratch, it's up to you to develop the old rules first and then put the new rules on top.
Thank you for this presentation, by the way. I have a lot of terrible ideas here from it, so thank you very much. The thought process that I had was, Do you see any limitation, perhaps, on the ability to have the old processor and the Arduino board potentially cooperate? For example, playing the old rules, but allowing for the ability to connect to basically a maintenance portal via Wi-Fi to perhaps do something along the lines of undo a drain rather than having to deal with compensation balls all the time.
Yeah, I mean that's a tough topic because with the Arduino because it is 32 times faster than the original CPU, and that's not quite fast enough to do everything you're saying there. So if you had an ESP like John's done with the Wi-Fi, unfortunately those don't sit on the bus as easily as the Arduino, so I haven't been able to make that work. So the answer is no, conditionally. You can go out and tweak stuff on the 5101 if you halt the original CPU, and you can go out and check high scores, change what ball you're on, that kind of stuff. Kinda, not really. So I would say no. Sorry.
One more. One more.
Any other? All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching. Thank you.